In the roaring heart of Las Vegas, under the blinding lights of the MGM Grand, a 78-year-old martial artist was about to silence the doubters. A night meant for showcasing young talent turned legendary when Mike Tyson called Chuck Norris just a movie fighter, igniting a challenge no one expected. Chuck Norris wasn't your typical Hollywood action star. For decades, he was a six-time world karate champion, known for pioneering martial arts in America and defeating the best fighters of his generation. When Tyson dismissed him, he had no idea he was provoking a master who had turned discipline into a weapon. Norris stepped forward with quiet confidence, unleashing a response that would trigger a confrontation for the ages. What began as a war of words would become an exhibition match that shook combat sports history. The Las Vegas arena would never be the same after witnessing two legends, Iron Mike and the Dragon Slayer, collide in a battle of respect versus raw power. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Las Vegas arena pulsed with electricity. Strobing lights flashed across the crowd, catching on jewelry, phones held high, and thousands of expectant faces. The massive screens overhead showed slow-motion highlights from previous fights. Beautiful, brutal ballet that had the audience roaring with anticipation. Commentators' voices boomed through the speakers, building the tension for the evening's showcase fight. "Tonight is about more than just fighting skill," the lead commentator said. "It's about star power. It's about personality." In the front row, Mike Tyson shifted in his seat. The former heavyweight champion of the world, now 59, but still carved from granite, leaned forward, elbows on knees. His dark eyes, intense as ever, tracked every movement in the arena with predatory focus. A decade into retirement, Tyson had transformed himself from the sport's most feared competitor to one of its most respected analysts. Tonight, he was both commentator and spectator. "You see it in his face," whispered the female correspondent sitting beside him. "The kid reminds you of yourself back in the day. Doesn't he, Mike?" Tyson didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the entrance tunnel where the fighters would soon emerge. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but distinct, that unmistakable Tyson lisp that somehow only made him more intimidating. "No," he said simply. "Nobody reminds me of me." The correspondent nodded, knowing better than to press. Mike Tyson wasn't here for small talk. He was here to witness what the promoters were calling the future of fighting. Behind them, spread throughout the VIP section, sat an assortment of celebrities and fighting legends. Actors, musicians, and athletes who had paid top dollar to be seen at the event of the season. Most were engaged in animated conversation, drinks in hand, laughing, and posing for photos. But in the corner of the VIP section, almost unnoticed, sat another legend. Chuck Norris, 78 years old, watched the preparations with quiet attentiveness. Unlike the other VIPs who had arrived with entourages and fanfare, Norris had slipped in alone, wearing a simple black jacket over a button-up shirt. No sunglasses, no flashy accessories. Nothing to draw attention, except the unmistakable presence that decades as a martial arts champion and action star had cultivated. The house lights dimmed. The crowd roared. The evening's main event was about to begin. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice thundered through the arena. "It's time for our main event." From the tunnel emerged Ramon the Hurricane Vasquez, the veteran fighter. At 38, his face bore the marks of a dozen years in the cage. A small scar above his right eye. The slightly flattened nose of a man who had taken as many punches as he'd given. He moved with the measured confidence of experience, acknowledging the crowd with a simple raised fist. "Vasquez comes in with an impressive record," the commentary team noted. 32 wins, 7 losses. A true professional who's seen it all and done it all. But the crowd's reaction to Vasquez was merely polite compared to the explosion that followed when his opponent emerged. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the undefeated, the unstoppable, the undeniable future of MMA, Jordan "The Truth" Williams. The arena erupted as Williams burst from the tunnel. At 26, he was everything the new generation of fighters aspired to be. Technically brilliant, physically imposing, and most importantly to many fans, a marketing phenomenon. His entrance was choreographed like a music video, flashing lights, bass-heavy music, and a swaggering walk that was already being imitated by kids across America. Williams played to every section of the crowd, pointing, winking, blowing kisses to female fans. His entourage followed behind him, filming everything for his social media channels. His fighting shorts featured his personal logo, and every inch of exposed skin seemed to ripple with perfectly defined muscle. 8 fights, 8 wins, 8 knockouts, the commentator said. Jordan Williams is not just winning fights, he's creating moments. He's creating content. He's creating a brand. In the front row, Tyson's expression darkened almost imperceptibly. Beside him, the correspondent noticed and made a quick note on her tablet. Williams climbed into the octagon with a dancer's grace, immediately launching into a series of flashy warm-up moves, spinning kicks that weren't strictly necessary but photographed beautifully. He beckoned to Vasquez, who simply nodded and took his position. The referee called both men to center cage for final instructions. Williams bounced on his toes, unable or unwilling to stay still, while Vasquez stood motionless, hands at his sides. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Youth versus experience, flamboyance versus restraint. "I want a clean fight," the referee said. "Obey my commands at all times. Touch gloves if you want." Vasquez extended his hand. Williams tapped it with theatrical reluctance, then leaned in close to whisper something. Whatever he said made Vasquez's expression harden, but the older fighter simply returned to his corner without responding. "Oh, Williams is already getting in his head," the commentator said. "That's his style. Mental warfare before physical warfare." The bell rang. The fight was on. Williams exploded from his corner, covering the distance to Vasquez in 3 fluid steps. His opening combination jab, cross, high kick was textbook perfect, forcing the veteran fighter to backpedal immediately. Vasquez blocked the first 2 strikes, but the kick glanced off his shoulder, nearly connecting with his head. "Careful, careful," Tyson muttered under his breath. "Don't rush." But Williams wasn't careful. He pressed forward relentlessly, throwing dazzling combinations that had the crowd gasping. Midway through the first round, he caught Vasquez with a stinging jab that snapped the older man's head back. "You feeling old yet?" Williams taunted, loud enough for the front rows to hear. Vasquez responded with a quick counter right that momentarily disrupted Williams's rhythm. For a fleeting moment, the younger fighter looked surprised. Then his grin returned, wider than before. He tapped his own chin, inviting another shot. The first round ended with Williams clearly ahead. As the fighters returned to their corners, the big screens showed Williams winking at someone in the crowd while his cornermen attended to him. Vasquez, meanwhile, sat breathing heavily, listening intently to his coach. "Williams is putting on a master class," the commentator said. "But don't count Vasquez out yet. He's been in tough spots before." The second round began much like the first, with Williams pressing forward aggressively. But now he was adding flourishes to his technique, looking away before throwing punches, dropping his hands to his waist between combinations, even turning his back momentarily after landing a particularly sharp jab. "What is he doing?" Tyson said, loud enough for those around him to hear. "Fight the man. Stop dancing." Williams continued his offensive barrage, mixing legitimate technique with crowd-pleasing showmanship. 3 minutes into the second round, he feinted left, then launched a spinning kick that caught Vasquez flush on the temple. The veteran fighter stumbled, his legs suddenly unsteady beneath him. Williams moved in, his movements now precise and predatory. A lightning-fast combination jab, cross, left hook, and Vasquez crashed to the canvas. The referee immediately jumped between them, waving Williams off. Medical staff rushed into the cage as the crowd roared in appreciation of the spectacular finish. But Williams wasn't finished performing. He climbed the cage wall and perched atop it, arms spread wide, drinking in the adulation. When he finally jumped down, he approached the medical team surrounding Vasquez, leaning over to say something to the dazed fighter. One of the medics gave Williams a hard look and gestured for him to back away. Williams laughed, turning to parade around the cage again, pointing to himself and nodding as if confirming what everyone already knew, that he was, indeed, the future of the sport. "And it's over," the commentator shouted. "Another spectacular finish from the Truth Williams. Love him or hate him, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot deny his talent." In the VIP section, Chuck Norris remained perfectly still, his weathered face expressionless as he watched the celebration unfold. Nearby, other celebrities were on their feet, phones out, capturing the moment. But Norris simply observed, hands resting lightly on his knees. As the medical team helped Vasquez to his feet, Williams grabbed the microphone from the announcer. The crowd, sensing more entertainment, roared in anticipation. "Was there ever any doubt?" Williams shouted, turning in a slow circle to address the entire arena. "Was there ever any question who the best in the world is?" The response was deafening, equal parts cheers and boos, exactly the reaction Williams thrived on. Controversy was currency in the fighting world, and Williams was becoming the richest man in the sport. "They said Vasquez was experienced," Williams continued, eyeing the older fighter as he was helped from the cage. "They said he'd seen it all. Well, he hadn't seen me." More cheers, more boos. Williams soaked it all in, then turned directly toward the commentary table where Tyson sat watching. "What do you think, Iron Mike?" Williams called out. "Am I living up to the hype? Am I the real deal? Or what?" A hush fell over the nearby crowd. Mike Tyson, caught off guard by the direct address, leaned back in his seat. For a moment, it seemed he might ignore the young fighter. Then, slowly, he leaned toward his microphone. "You've got skill," Tyson said, his voice carrying through the arena speakers. "No question about that." Williams grinned, raising his arms again in celebration of the endorsement, but Tyson wasn't finished. "But skill without respect," he continued. "That's just a circus act. Not a fighter." The crowd's reaction was immediate, a chorus of oohs rippling through the arena. Williams' smile faltered for just a moment before returning, brittle and forced. "Respect is earned in the cage," Williams countered, pointing to the unconscious Vasquez being helped out. "And I just earned plenty." Tyson shook his head, leaning back in his seat. But something had been ignited, a tension that hung in the air, electric and dangerous. The commentators quickly jumped in, trying to steer the conversation back to the fight itself. But the damage was done. A challenge had been issued and dismissed. The line had been drawn. And in the VIP section, Chuck Norris continued to watch, his eyes missing nothing. "He's got all the tools," Mike Tyson said into the microphone, his gravelly voice carrying throughout the arena. "Speed, power, technique. But," he paused, leaning back in his chair at the commentary table, "there's a difference between being a fighter and being an entertainer. 20 minutes had passed since Williams' knockout victory. The arena hummed with post-fight energy as cleanup crews prepared the cage for the next bout. Most of the audience remained in their seats, many watching the live post-fight analysis featuring Tyson and the commentary team. "So, you're not impressed by Williams' performance?" the lead commentator asked, an edge of excitement in his voice. The network executives loved nothing more than controversy, especially when it involved their biggest stars. "I'm impressed by his talent," Tyson clarified, his eyes intense beneath his furrowed brow. "But all that showboating? That's disrespect, not just to his opponent, to the sport." The big screens showed Williams in his locker room, still buzzing with adrenaline, as his team removed his gloves and applied ice to his knuckles. Someone was showing him a phone-likely footage of his knockout, already going viral online. Some would argue that the entertainment factor is what brings new fans to MMA. The female correspondent suggested. "The personality, the show, it's part of the modern fight game." Tyson shook his head, the movement sharp and decisive. "Fighting isn't about followers, or likes, or whatever. It's about respect. It's about discipline." He gestured toward the tunnel where Vasquez had been helped out. "That man in there gave years of his life to this sport. He deserves better than to be treated like a prop in someone's social media video." In the VIP section, several celebrities nodded in agreement, raising their drinks in Tyson's direction. The camera caught this reaction, then panned across the rest of the VIP area, momentarily lingering on Chuck Norris, who remained as still and attentive as he had been throughout the evening. "Speaking of discipline," the lead commentator said, seizing the moment, "what do you make of the comparison some fans are drawing between Williams and martial arts-based fighters? Some say his flashy style reminds them of traditional martial arts demonstrations." Tyson snorted, the sound sharp and dismissive. "There's nothing traditional about what he does. Traditional martial arts is built on respect, on discipline." He shook his head again. "Guys like Chuck Norris." The camera cut immediately to Norris, in the VIP section. The martial arts legend's expression remained unchanged, but there was a subtle shift in his posture, a slight straightening of his spine at the mention of his name. "They do their thing in movies, and that's fine," Tyson continued. "But let's be real. That's choreography. That's acting. In the ring, in real fighting, it's different. It's raw. It's honest." He tapped the table with his finger for emphasis. "When I was champion, there wasn't any of this dancing around. You came to fight, or you got knocked out. Simple." The correspondent's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the potential headline forming. "So you're saying someone like Chuck Norris, despite his martial arts championships before his movie career, wouldn't have stood a chance in your era of boxing?" Tyson shrugged, his massive shoulders rising and falling dramatically. "Different worlds. Movie fighting and real fighting. They don't mix. Never have. Never will." A murmur rippled through the arena as the audience processed Tyson's words. The camera once again found Norris in the VIP section. This time, there was a noticeable reaction, not in his expression, which remained stoic, but in his eyes. Something had awakened there, a quiet intensity that anyone who had ever faced him in competition would have recognized immediately. "Well, that's certainly a bold statement," the lead commentator said, clearly delighted by the brewing controversy. "And speaking of bold, let's go live to Jordan Williams, who's joining us from backstage." The big screen switched to a backstage feed showing Williams, now wearing a designer tracksuit, his hair freshly styled, despite having been in a fight minutes earlier. "Jordan, congratulations on another spectacular victory," the commentator said. "We've just been discussing your performance with Mike Tyson, who had some Interesting observations. Williams grinned. All white teeth and confidence. I heard. He looked directly into the camera. With all due respect to the legend, and you are a legend, Mike, but the fight game has evolved. It's not just about knocking people out anymore. It's about giving the fans what they want. He spread his arms wide. And this is what they want. On cue, a section of the crowd erupted in cheers, many holding signs with Williams' name and catchphrases. Williams pointed to them, his grin widening. The numbers don't lie, he continued. Biggest pay-per-view numbers in MMA history. Most social media followers of any active fighter. Most talk. Too. Tyson interrupted, his voice cutting through Williams' list like a blade. In my day, fighters let their fists do the talking. Williams laughed, but there was an edge to it now. In your day, fighters didn't have the technical skills we have now. MMA is a complete sport. Boxing is just one piece of the puzzle. The audience collectively inhaled. This was no longer playful banter. This was a direct challenge from a young star to one of the sport's most revered figures. Tyson leaned forward, his expression darkening. You think those spinning kicks and flashy moves would have saved you from this? He held up his right fist, the same fist that had rendered countless opponents unconscious in his prime. I think they might have. Williams shot back. And I think a lot of those martial arts movie stars you were just dismissing might have given you problems too. Chuck Norris won actual karate championships before he ever stepped on a movie set. The camera cut again to Norris, who had now shifted forward slightly in his seat. His face remained composed, but there was no mistaking the alertness in his posture. He was no longer simply observing, he was engaging, even in silence. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Tyson scoffed. Championship karate isn't street fighting. It isn't boxing. It's points and rules and... It's discipline, a new voice said. Calm. Measured. Distinctive. The arena fell silent as Chuck Norris stood from his seat in the VIP section. Though in his late 70s, he moved with the fluid grace of a man half his age. The crowd, recognizing the legendary figure, began to murmur excitedly. Chuck Norris, ladies and gentlemen, the commentator announced, unable to keep the amazement from his voice. It seems we've drawn the attention of another fighting legend. Norris walked slowly toward the commentary table. His movements unhurried, but purposeful. Security staff made a move to intercept him, then seemed to think better of it. Stepping back as he approached, someone handed him a microphone. Mike, Norris said, nodding respectfully to Tyson. It's been a while. Tyson shifted in his seat, suddenly looking less certain than he had moments before. Chuck, didn't know you were here tonight. I try to keep up with the sport, Norris replied. His voice was soft but carried a natural authority that commanded attention. All combat sports. Always have. The crowd had gone completely silent, sensing that they were witnessing something historic. Even Williams, still on the big screen, had stopped talking, watching the interaction with undisguised interest. Look, I didn't mean any disrespect, Tyson began. But Norris held up a hand, stopping him. You spoke your truth, Norris said. You believe movie fighting and real fighting are different worlds, that they don't mix. He paused, his eyes steady on Tyson's. I disagree. The simple statement hung in the air between them, not aggressive, not angry, but firm, immovable. Are we actually witnessing this? The commentator whispered, forgetting momentarily that his microphone was live. Chuck Norris, and Mike Tyson, in what appears to be a confrontation. Norris turned slightly, addressing both Tyson and the camera. Before I was in movies, I was a 6-time world karate champion. I fought and defeated the best martial artists of my generation. The discipline, the respect, the control. Those aren't just words or movie concepts. They're the foundation of true fighting spirit. William's voice cut in from the big screen. Exactly what I've been saying. Fighting has evolved beyond just you, Norris interrupted, turning toward William's image. Have extraordinary talent, but talent without humility is just arrogance. His tone remained even, almost gentle. But there was steel beneath the softness, and arrogance is the enemy of growth. William's smile faltered. Unused to being addressed in such a direct manner by someone he couldn't easily dismiss, Tyson, meanwhile, had regained his composure. Look, Chuck, I respect what you accomplished in karate, but we're talking about different worlds here. Boxing, MMA. These are combat sports where the goal is to hurt your opponent, to knock them out. Movies are choreography. Would you like to test your theory? Norris asked quietly. The arena went deadly silent. Did Chuck Norris, 78-year-old Chuck Norris, just challenge Mike Tyson? Tyson stared at him, momentarily speechless. Then he laughed, the sound echoing through the silent arena. Come on, man, you can't be serious. Norris didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He simply looked at Tyson with calm certainty. I've never been more serious. The lead commentator, recovering his professional demeanor, leaned into his microphone. Gentlemen, while this makes for fascinating television, I think we should… No. Williams interrupted from the screen. Let's see it. The boxer versus the karate master. Old school versus older school. He laughed at his own joke. Hell, I'll even offer my spot in the next fight. Let these two legends settle it in the cage. The suggestion sent a jolt of electricity through the arena. Fans began to chant, the sound building from a murmur to a roar. Ty-Sun, Nor-Riss, Tyson, Norris. Security personnel looked to the event promoters, who were already huddled in frantic discussion. The network executives were signaling frantically from the production booth, "Don't let this moment slip away." Their expressions seemed to say. This was ratings gold. Tyson stood from the commentary table, his massive frame tensed like a coiled spring. He approached Norris slowly, stopping just feet away. Though Norris was tall, Tyson's presence seemed to fill the space between them, dark, powerful, intimidating. You sure you want to do this, Chuck? Tyson asked. His voice low. I respect you too much to want to hurt you. Norris met his gaze without flinching. And I respect you too much to assume I would win easily, he replied. But respect isn't proven through words. It's demonstrated through actions. The challenge hung in the air between them. Two legends, two philosophies, two eras of fighting colliding in an unexpected moment of truth. In the background, the promoters rushed forward, already seeing dollar signs. The commentators leaned into their microphones, trying to capture every word. Williams watched from the screen, his earlier bravado replaced by genuine fascination. And throughout the arena, every phone was raised, recording what was quickly becoming the most unexpected confrontation in fighting history. Chuck Norris, the martial arts master whose discipline had made him a legend. Mike Tyson, the boxing phenom, whose raw power had terrorized the heavyweight division. Two icons. One cage. The spark had been lit. Now came the fire. The promoters worked with frantic energy, huddled at ringside with tablets and phones, making calls, sending texts, What had begun as an unscripted moment was rapidly transforming into the most talked-about event in combat sports history. 20 minutes after Chuck Norris and Mike Tyson's tense exchange, the arena remained packed, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the promoter's voice boomed through the speakers, "we are witnessing history in the making tonight." Behind the scenes, lawyers hurriedly drafted waivers. Medical staff prepared for an exhibition match that no one had anticipated. Production crews adjusted lighting and camera positions, determined not to miss a moment of what was unfolding. In a makeshift locker room, a converted storage area, Chuck Norris sat alone on a bench. Unlike the chaotic energy surrounding the event, Norris was perfectly still, eyes closed, hands resting lightly on his knees. At 78, his face showed the lines of age, but his physique remained remarkably fit, a testament to the lifetime discipline that had defined his career both in and out of the spotlight. There was a knock at the door. Norris opened his eyes but didn't move. "Come in," he said quietly. A young production assistant entered, visibly nervous to be in the presence of the legend. "Mr. Norris, they're asking if you need anything. Equipment, gear. A corner team." Norris shook his head. "Just time." The assistant nodded, backing toward the door. "They're saying 15 minutes, sir." "Thank you." When the door closed, Norris stood and began a series of slow, deliberate stretches. His movements were fluid, controlled, the product of decades of training that had become as natural to him as breathing. There was no wasted energy, no flashy techniques. Just the quiet efficiency of a master at work. Across the arena, in a proper locker room, Mike Tyson was a study in contrast. He paced the small space like a caged animal, rolling his massive shoulders, shadowboxing short combinations. At 59, he remained powerfully built, his arms and chest rippling with the muscle that had once made him the most feared puncher in boxing history. "This is crazy," said his longtime friend and assistant, who was hurriedly wrapping Tyson's hands. "You don't have to do this, Mike." The guy's pushing 80. "For Christ's sake." Tyson stopped pacing, fixing his friend with a hard stare. "Age don't mean nothing. You saw him out there. He moves like a man half his age." He flexed his wrapped hands, testing the support. "Besides, it's an exhibition. 3 rounds. No one's trying to kill anybody." But the intensity in Tyson's eyes suggested otherwise. For him, every fight, even an exhibition, was a matter of pride, of dominance, of proving something essential about himself. "All the same," his friend continued, "take it easy out there. This is Chuck Norris we're talking about. American icon, war hero, the internet's favorite badass." Tyson grunted, returning to his shadowboxing. "Yeah, well, the internet never took a left hook from Iron Mike." Back in the arena, the crowd had swelled beyond capacity. Word had spread through social media, drawing people from nearby casinos and hotels. Security was overwhelmed, forced to block the entrances as the fire marshal expressed concerns about the overcrowding. In the technical booth, network executives were beside themselves with excitement. This unplanned confrontation was already generating more social media mentions than any planned sporting event of the year. Hashtags were trending worldwide. Tyson vs. Norris. Legends fight. Real vs. real. "We've got confirmation," the producer said into his headset. "Both men have signed the waivers. Medical clearance is provisional but approved. We're a go in 10 minutes. The commentators, barely containing their excitement, leaned into their microphones. "For those just joining us, you are about to witness something unprecedented," the lead announcer said. "What began as a post-fight analysis has evolved into a once-in-a-lifetime exhibition match between 2 of the greatest combat sports figures in history." The female correspondent, who had been interviewing spectators, returned to the commentary table breathless with excitement. "The atmosphere in here is electric," she reported. "I've spoken to fans who have offered thousands of dollars for tickets. Celebrities are trying to get in through the back entrance. This is beyond anything I've ever seen." On the big screen, Jordan Williams appeared, now positioned at ringside with a microphone of his own. The young fighter, sensing the historic nature of the moment, had temporarily set aside his brashness. As the guy who kind of started this whole thing, he said, "I just want to say it's an honor to witness two legends stepping up like this. Whatever happens tonight, the fighting world will never be the same." In the VIP section, opinions were divided. Some celebrities expressed concern about the age difference, about the potential for injury. Others were caught up in the spectacle, placing impromptu bets on the outcome. Camera crews captured it all, feeding the frenzy of interest. Then, without warning, the house lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the entrance to the tunnel. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice resonated through the arena, "please welcome to the cage a 6-time world karate champion, martial arts pioneer, and Hollywood legend, Chuck Norris." The crowd erupted as Norris emerged from the tunnel. Unlike Williams' flashy entrance earlier in the evening, Norris walked out alone, without music or special effects. He wore simple black pants and a fitted black t-shirt that revealed arms still corded with muscle. His face was composed, focused, a stark contrast to the frenzy surrounding him. As he approached the cage, fans reached out, hoping to touch him, to connect with the legend. Norris acknowledged them with a slight nod, but remained focused on what lay ahead. He climbed the steps to the cage with the same measured grace that characterized all his movements, ducking through the door without ceremony. Once inside, he moved to the center of the octagon, standing perfectly still, hands at his sides. Not posturing, not playing to the cameras, simply present, in the moment, awaiting his opponent. "And now," the announcer continued, his voice rising with excitement, "please welcome the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history, the most feared puncher of his generation, Iron Mike Tyson." The arena exploded with noise as Tyson's signature entrance music, Tupac's Ambitions Azafita, blasted through the speakers. Tyson emerged wearing black shorts and no shirt, his upper body still impressively muscled, despite the years since his prime. Unlike Norris, Tyson was surrounded by an entourage: trainers, friends, security personnel, all feeding the aura of menace that had been his trademark since his earliest days in the ring. Tyson bounced on the balls of his feet as he walked, rolling his head from side to side, loosening his neck. His face was set in the intense scowl that had intimidated opponents before the first punch was ever thrown. As he approached the cage, he raised his fists to the crowd, drawing another massive roar of approval. When he entered the cage and moved to the center, the contrast between the two men was stark and immediate. Tyson compact, powerful, radiating barely contained aggression. Norris tall, composed, exuding quiet confidence. They stood 10 feet apart, neither speaking, as the referee entered to give final instructions. "Gentlemen," the referee began, "this is a 3-round exhibition match. 2-minute rounds with 1-minute rest periods. Standard MMA rules apply, but with additional safety protocols." He looked at each man in turn. "I want a clean fight. Protect yourselves at all times. Obey my commands. Touch gloves if you wish, then return to your corners." Norris extended his hand first. After a moment's hesitation, Tyson reached out and tapped his gloves against Norris's. No words were exchanged, but volumes were spoken in that simple gesture of respect. As they turned to walk to their respective corners, the commentators offered their final thoughts before the historic encounter. "Mike Tyson brings devastating punching power. Even at 59, the lead analyst observed. His hand speed was legendary in his prime, and he's shown in recent exhibition bouts that he's retained much of that explosiveness. Meanwhile, Chuck Norris brings a lifetime of martial arts mastery, the correspondent added. 6-time world champion in karate. Founder of his own fighting system, Chun Cook Do. While we haven't seen him compete in decades, his technical knowledge is unquestionable. The key factor may be range, the third commentator suggested. Tyson will want to get inside and unleash those hooks and uppercuts. Norris will likely try to use his reach advantage and kicking ability to maintain distance. In his corner, Tyson had a team of 3, his longtime friend serving as chief cornerman, along with a cutman and a trainer. They spoke to him rapidly, offering last-minute advice and encouragement. Tyson nodded, his eyes never leaving Norris on the opposite side of the cage. Norris stood alone in his corner. No team, no cornerman. Just a towel and a water bottle placed neatly on a stool. His eyes were closed again, his breathing deep and measured. While the arena around him vibrated with noise and excitement, Norris appeared to be in a space of perfect calm, the eye of the hurricane. The timekeeper signaled to the referee. The moment had arrived. Seconds out, the referee called. Tyson's team exited the cage, leaving the 2 legends alone with the referee. The crowd's roar intensified, then hushed as the significance of the moment sank in. Phones were raised throughout the arena, recording what many believed would be the most unlikely confrontation in fighting history. At the commentary table, even the professional announcers fell silent, transfixed by the scene unfolding before them. Chuck Norris opened his eyes, his gaze steady and clear. Mike Tyson bounced lightly on his toes, hands raised in his distinctive peekaboo style. The referee looked from one legend to the other, then raised his hand high. Fight! For a single heartbeat, neither man moved. Then Tyson exploded forward, closing the distance with the same blinding speed that had defined his career. His first combination, jab, right hook, left uppercut, cut through the air with vicious intent. But Norris was no longer where the punches were aimed. With a subtle shift of weight and position, a movement so efficient it was almost invisible, he had stepped just beyond Tyson's range. No wasted motion, no dramatic evasion. Simply not there. Tyson pressed forward again, more measured this time, cutting off the cage with the ring generalship that had made him more than just a puncher in his prime. He feinted with his left, hoping to draw a reaction that would open a path for his devastating right hook. Norris didn't take the bait. He circled smoothly, maintaining the perfect distance close enough to counter, far enough to avoid the full force of Tyson's power. When Tyson lunged forward again, Norris deflected the punch with a precise block, simultaneously delivering a sharp front kick that caught Tyson in the midsection. The crowd gasped. Tyson grunted, more in surprise than pain, and backed up a half step. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Incredible defensive awareness from Norris, the commentator whispered, almost afraid to break the spell of the moment. He's making Tyson miss by millimeters. Tyson reset, his face darkening with intensity. He launched another combination, this one designed to trap Norris against the cage. Jab, cross, hook, each punch a potential fight ender if it landed clean. But Norris moved with the fluid economy of decades of training. He slipped the jab, parried the cross, and ducked under the hook. As Tyson's momentum carried him forward, Norris executed a perfect sweep, catching Tyson's back leg and momentarily disrupting his balance. Tyson stumbled but didn't fall, his natural athleticism allowing him to recover quickly. He spun to face Norris again, now with a new respect visible in his eyes. This wasn't going to be the easy exhibition he might have expected. "Look at that footwork from Norris," the lead commentator whispered. At 78 years old, he's moving like a man decades younger. In the audience, Jordan Williams leaned forward, his earlier bravado replaced by genuine fascination. The young fighter's eyes tracked every movement, every subtle shift of weight and position. This wasn't the flashy fighting he practiced. This was something older, something deeper. The foundation upon which all combat sports were built. Tyson advanced again, more cautiously this time. He feinted, trying to draw Norris into a mistake. But the martial arts master remained composed, responding only to real threats. Conserving energy, with an efficiency born of countless hours of practice and refinement. When Tyson launched his next attack, a lightning-fast combination culminating in his signature right hook, Norris chose that moment to counter. As Tyson's hook whistled through the air, Norris stepped inside its arc and delivered a precise strike to Tyson's solar plexus. The blow wasn't thrown with maximum power, this was an exhibition. After all, but its precision was undeniable. Tyson felt the impact, a momentary disruption of breath that caused him to take a backward step. For the first time in the encounter, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. The crowd sensed the shift. Murmurs spread through the arena as spectators realized they weren't watching a curiosity, a sideshow between an aged actor and a retired boxer. They were witnessing a genuine contest between two masters of their respective arts. Norris is showing why he was a world champion before he ever set foot on a movie set, the female correspondent observed. That counter was perfectly timed and placed. Tyson regrouped, his expression hardening with determination. He began to cut off the cage more effectively, limiting Norris's movement options. When he attacked again, it was with renewed purpose, a measured advance followed by a devastating combination designed to overwhelm. This time, some of Tyson's punches found their mark. A jab grazed Norris's shoulder, and a follow-up hook caught him on the forearm as he blocked. The impact of Tyson's power, even partially deflected, was evident. Norris took a step back, recalculating his approach. First, significant contact from Tyson, the commentator noted. Even at 59, that legendary power is still there. As the first round approached its conclusion, the pace intensified. Tyson, sensing an opportunity, pressed his advantage, forcing Norris to defend a barrage of punches. Norris weathered the storm with remarkable composure. His defenses tight, his counters precise when openings appeared. Just before the bell, Tyson landed his cleanest shot, yet a straight right that partially broke through Norris's guard. The impact caused Norris to momentarily lose his footing, nearly sending him to the canvas. The crowd gasped collectively. But in a display of remarkable balance and recovery, Norris regained his stability and immediately countered with a spinning back kick that caught Tyson by surprise, forcing him to retreat as the bell sounded to end the round. "Incredible!" the lead commentator exclaimed. Both legends showing why they defined their respective eras. As they returned to their corners, the contrast in their approaches remained stark. Tyson's team surrounded him immediately, offering water, advice, and encouragement. Norris returned to his empty corner, sat on his stool, took a single sip of water, and closed his eyes, finding his center amidst the chaos of the arena. The crowd, which had been divided in its loyalties at the start, now watched in collective awe. This wasn't just a novelty matchup, it was a masterclass in two distinct approaches to combat. Tyson's raw power and boxing expertise against Norris's technical precision and tactical awareness. In his corner, Tyson listened to his team's instructions with unusual focus. "He's slippery," Tyson admitted between breaths. "Got good movement for an old man." "You're finding your range," his cornerman assured him. "Remember, you've got the power advantage. Make him come to you, then counter when he commits." Across the cage, Norris sat in solitary preparation. His breathing had already regulated, his face serene despite the intensity of the previous exchange. When the 10-second warning sounded, he opened his eyes, stood without assistance, and rolled his shoulders once before returning to the center of the cage. As the second round began, a new energy filled the arena. The initial curiosity had transformed into genuine appreciation for the skill on display. Phones remained raised, capturing every moment, but now with a reverence that hadn't been present before. "Round 2, the referee called, stepping back. Tyson adjusted his strategy immediately, showing the boxing IQ that had complemented his natural power throughout his career. Rather than charging forward, he established his jab, keeping Norris at the end of his punches while looking for openings. Norris responded with equal adaptability, using his superior reach and kicking ability to control distance. When Tyson jabbed, Norris answered with front kicks that kept the boxer from establishing his preferred range. The chess match continued for the first minute of the round, neither man willing to overcommit. The crowd watched in rapt attention, appreciating the tactical battle unfolding before them. Then Tyson changed gears suddenly, exploding forward with a combination that had demolished countless opponents in his prime. Left hook to the body, right uppercut, left hook to the head, a sequence delivered with such speed and power that it seemed impossible to defend. But Norris had spent a lifetime preparing for such moments. As Tyson launched his assault, Norris's defenses tightened. He absorbed the body shot on his elbow, slipped the uppercut by millimeters, and deflected the hook with his forearm. In the split-second opening that followed, Norris countered with a perfectly placed knee strike to Tyson's midsection, followed by a short elbow that grazed the boxer's temple as he ducked away. The exchange happened so quickly that many in the audience missed the details, seeing only that both legends had landed blows and both remained standing. But at the commentary table, the analysts understood the significance of what they'd just witnessed. "That was championship-level defense from Norris," the lead commentator said, unable to keep the awe from his voice. Tyson threw his signature combination, the same one that knocked out countless world-class boxers, and Norris defended it perfectly. "And that counter," the second commentator added. "The precision, the timing, that's not movie choreography. That's the muscle memory of a true martial artist." In the cage, both men reassessed. Tyson touched his temple where Norris's elbow had grazed him, a newfound respect evident in his expression. Norris adjusted his stance slightly, acknowledging the power he'd just absorbed. As the round continued, their exchanges grew more technical, more nuanced. Tyson's boxing fundamentals, his head movement, his footwork, his punch selection, showcased why he had been the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Norris's defensive acumen and counter-striking ability demonstrated the depth of his martial arts mastery. Neither man was fighting at the peak of their physical prime, but both were displaying the timeless technique and tactical understanding that transcends age. It wasn't about who could hit harder or move faster, it was about who could think better, adapt quicker, execute more precisely. With 30 seconds left in the round, Tyson made his move. He feinted a jab, drew Norris's counter, then slipped inside with a devastating left hook that caught the martial artist on the shoulder. The impact knocked Norris off balance, creating the opening Tyson had been waiting for. He followed with a straight right, aimed at Norris's chin, a punch that, in his prime, had rendered men unconscious before they hit the canvas. Time seemed to slow as the punch approached its target. The crowd held its collective breath. Cameras flashed frantically, trying to capture the potentially decisive moment. Then, in a display of reflexes that defied his age, Norris executed a subtle head movement, not a dramatic evasion, but a precisely calibrated shift that caused Tyson's punch to graze his cheek rather than land flush. As Tyson's momentum carried him forward, Norris countered with a perfect sweep, this time successfully taking the boxer's legs from under him. Tyson hit the canvas with a thud that echoed through the silent arena. It wasn't a knockout. Tyson was up almost immediately, more surprised than hurt. But the symbolic impact was undeniable. Mike Tyson, who had put fear into the hearts of the world's best heavyweights, had been taken down by a man nearly 20 years his senior. The bell rang to end the second round, leaving the audience in stunned appreciation. This wasn't just an exhibition anymore, it was a revelation, a demonstration of fighting principles that transcended styles and eras. As they returned to their corners, a strange thing happened. Tyson, rather than sitting on his stool, remained standing, looking across the cage at Norris. Then, in a gesture that surprised everyone, he nodded a simple, respectful acknowledgement from one legend to another. Norris returned the nod with equal respect. In that moment, something shifted in the arena. The narrative of confrontation, of conflict between opposing philosophies, transformed into something else, a recognition of shared dedication and of mutual respect between masters who had devoted their lives to the pursuit of excellence in combat. The commentators, sensing the significance of the moment, spoke in hushed tones. "We came here expecting a clash of styles, a battle between opposing approaches to fighting," the lead commentator said. "What we're witnessing instead is a demonstration of the universal principles that underlie all combat disciplines: timing, distance, technique, and above all, respect." As the final round approached, the crowd's energy had transformed. Gone was the bloodthirsty anticipation of a knockout. In its place was a reverent appreciation for the display of skill and heart from two aging legends who had nothing left to prove but were proving it anyway. Jordan Williams, the young fighter whose arrogance had inadvertently sparked this historic encounter, watched from ringside with an expression of growing humility. The flashy techniques and crowd-pleasing antics that had defined his career suddenly seemed shallow in comparison to the depth of mastery on display before him. The bell rang for the final round. Tyson and Norris met in the center of the cage, both showing the marks of battle, but neither diminished by age or exertion. What followed wasn't just fighting, it was art. Tyson's punches, still carrying the echo of his legendary power, were thrown with purpose and precision. Norris's movements, economical and fluid, demonstrated why he had been a champion long before he became a Hollywood icon. They exchanged techniques like master musicians, trading solos, each building on the other's contribution, each acknowledging the other's mastery. There was still intensity, still the competitive fire that had driven both men to the pinnacles of their respective disciplines. But there was also a shared understanding, an unspoken recognition that they were creating something greater than either could have created alone. As the final seconds ticked away, neither man sought a decisive finish. Neither needed to prove dominance. The point had been made, not about who was better, but about what true fighting spirit really means. When the final bell rang, Tyson and Norris stood facing each other in the center of the cage. Without prompting from the referee, they embraced a genuine gesture of mutual respect that brought the crowd to its feet in thunderous applause. No winner was announced. No hand was raised. None was needed. As they separated from their embrace, Tyson leaned in to speak into Norris's ear. The microphones couldn't catch his words, but those closest to the cage saw Norris smile and nod in response. Later, some would claim Tyson had said, "I was wrong about you. That wasn't movie fighting. That was the real thing." Others insisted he had simply said, "Thank you for the lesson." The truth remained between the two legends. But as they exited the cage together, side by side, the message to everyone watching was clear. True strength isn't measured in knockouts or championships or social media followers. It's measured in discipline, in respect, in the quiet dignity that comes from mastering oneself before attempting to master others. In his seat at ringside, Jordan Williams watched them go, the cocky smile gone from his face, replaced by thoughtful reflection. The lesson hadn't been delivered with words or lectures. It had been demonstrated through action, through example, the most powerful teaching method of all. As Tyson and Norris disappeared into the tunnel together, the arena remained on its feet, the applause continuing long after they had gone. It wasn't just appreciation for what they had witnessed. It was recognition that they had been part of something timeless, something that transcended sport and spectacle. A reminder that true legends are made not by how loudly they proclaim their greatness, but by how quietly they embody it. The hallway leading from the cage to the locker rooms buzzed with frantic energy. Production assistants with headsets darted back and forth. Security personnel formed a human barrier against the crush of media, and medical staff hovered anxiously, waiting to examine the two legends who had just made combat sports history. Mike Tyson and Chuck Norris walked side by side, neither speaking, both processing what had just transpired between them. Their shared silence wasn't awkward, it was contemplative, weighted with the mutual recognition that something unexpected had just occurred. Something important. Behind them, the arena still thundered with applause, the crowd reluctant to let the moment end. Ahead, a gauntlet of cameras, microphones, and shouted questions awaited. But in this narrow corridor, for these few precious seconds, they existed in a bubble of calm amidst the chaos. A production assistant approached, clipboard in hand, nervous energy radiating from her every movement. "Mr. Tyson, Mr. Norris," she began, her voice betraying her awe at addressing both legends simultaneously. "The network is requesting an immediate post-fight interview. Live. We've set up in the green room just down—" "No," Tyson interrupted, his tone firm but not unkind. "Not yet." The assistant blinked, clearly unprepared for refusal. "But sir, the ratings are through the roof. Social media is exploding. The network executives are—" The young lady said not yet. Norris interjected gently. His voice was soft, but there was an unmistakable authority behind it. "We'll need a few minutes." The assistant looked from one legend to the other, then nodded quickly. "Of course. I'll inform them. Take your time." She backed away, already speaking rapidly into her headset. Tyson glanced at Norris, a hint of amusement breaking through his typically intense expression. "They're not used to hearing no," he observed. "Neither are we," Norris replied with a small smile. "That's sometimes the problem." They continued walking, turning down a quieter corridor that led to the private locker rooms. Security personnel moved ahead of them, ensuring their path remained clear of the journalists and photographers who had somehow infiltrated the backstage area. "In here," a security guard said, holding open the door to a small conference room. "You'll have privacy. We'll keep everyone out until you're ready." Tyson and Norris entered the room, a simple space, with a table, chairs, and a water cooler. Nothing fancy, but at this moment it felt like a sanctuary. The door closed behind them, muffling the chaotic sounds from the arena. For a moment, neither spoke. Tyson paced slowly, rolling his massive shoulders, working out the tension of combat. Norris stood still, his breathing measured and controlled, center already regained. "You surprised me out there," Tyson said finally, breaking the silence. He poured himself a cup of water from the cooler. "That kick you caught me with in the second round, I never saw it coming." Norris accepted the cup of water Tyson offered him. "You surprised me too," he admitted. "Your speed is still remarkable." Most men half your age couldn't generate that kind of explosive power. They drank in silence, the mutual respect that had developed in the cage now extending into this private moment away from the cameras and the crowd. "You know they're going to ask who would have won," Tyson said after a while. "If we were both in our prime. If it had been a real fight, not an exhibition." Norris smiled slightly. "They always ask that. They need winners and losers. Black and white. It's easier that way." "And what will you tell them?" "The truth," Norris said simply. "That it's the wrong question." He set his cup down and looked directly at Tyson. "What happened out there wasn't about who was better, it was about what we both represent." Tyson nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Different paths to the same destination. Exactly. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. The production assistant had returned, her expression apologetic, but determined. "Gentlemen, I'm so sorry, but the network is insisting. The live post-fight show is waiting. Millions of viewers. We'll be right there," Norris assured her. He turned back to Tyson. "Ready to face the noise again?" Tyson took a deep breath, his public persona settling back over him like a familiar coat. "Let's do it." They exited the conference room and were immediately engulfed by the backstage chaos once more. Security personnel formed a tight formation around them, leading them through the crowded corridors toward the post-fight interview area. As they approached the green room, they could hear the animated voices of the commentary team discussing what had just transpired in the cage. Through the open door, they glimpsed the monitors showing replays of key moments from their exhibition match, analysts breaking down the technical exchanges in slow motion. "Never seen anything like it," one commentator was saying. The boxing prowess of Tyson against the martial arts mastery of Norris. Two completely different fighting philosophies, yet somehow perfectly matched. "And let's not forget," another added. "We're talking about a 59-year-old and a 78-year-old who just put on a better technical display than many championship fights between athletes in their physical prime." The production team noticed their arrival and signaled frantically to the commentators. The lead analyst immediately turned toward the door, his expression lighting up. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the camera, "we are honored to be joined now by the two legends themselves, Mike Tyson and Chuck Norris." The small studio erupted in applause as Tyson and Norris entered. They took their seats on the interview couch, the cameras adjusting to frame them together, the boxer and the martial artist, the force of nature and the embodiment of discipline, sitting side by side as colleagues rather than adversaries. "Gentlemen," the lead analyst began, barely containing his excitement, "on behalf of fight fans everywhere, I want to thank you both for what we just witnessed. It was, without exaggeration, one of the most extraordinary moments in combat sports history." Tyson nodded, accepting the praise with the confidence of a man accustomed to the spotlight. Norris simply inclined his head slightly, humble even in this moment of recognition. "Mike, let me begin with you," the analyst continued. "You've been in the ring with the greatest heavyweights of your era. How does Chuck Norris compare?" Tyson leaned forward, his intensity undimmed despite the friendly setting. "Different," he said decisively. "Different than anyone I've ever faced. Boxers, they move a certain way, think a certain way. Chuck." He glanced at Norris with newfound respect. "Chuck has a completely different understanding of distance, of timing. Those kicks, they change the whole equation." "And Chuck," the female correspondent jumped in, "you've faced world-class martial artists throughout your competitive career. How does Mike's power and speed compare?" Norris considered the question carefully before answering. "There's a reason Mike was the youngest heavyweight champion in history," he said. "On His combination of speed and power is unique. In all my years of competition and training, I've never encountered anyone who could generate that kind of explosive force with such economy of movement. The mutual respect between the two legends was palpable, creating an atmosphere quite different from the typical post-fight interview filled with bravado and challenges. I have to ask the question that's on everyone's mind, the lead analyst said, unable to resist. If you had both been in your absolute prime, Mike in the late 80s, Chuck in the early 70s, and if this had been a full rules contest rather than an exhibition, who would have won? Tyson and Norris exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. You know, Tyson said, surprising everyone with the thoughtfulness in his voice. I spent my whole career thinking that boxing was the ultimate test, that nothing could stand against the kind of power I brought into the ring. He paused, choosing his words carefully. What I realize today is that fighting isn't just about power or speed or even technique. It's about adaptation. It's about problem-solving under pressure. Norris nodded in agreement. In my prime, I believed that my martial arts system had answers for every fighting challenge. That discipline and proper technique could overcome any opponent. He smiled slightly. Life has a way of teaching humility to those who are willing to learn. So you're both saying? The analyst prompted, clearly hoping for a definitive answer. We're saying it doesn't matter, Tyson said with unexpected conviction. Fighting isn't about who's better in some hypothetical match that never happened. It's about the journey, the discipline, the respect, the willingness to face your fears. Norris added quietly, to test yourself against the unknown. The analysts exchanged glances, clearly not having anticipated such philosophical responses from two men known primarily for their fighting prowess. But before they could redirect the conversation, a commotion at the studio door drew everyone's attention. Jordan Williams, the young fighter whose arrogant victory had inadvertently sparked this historic encounter, stood in the doorway. His earlier cockiness was gone, replaced by an expression that hovered between uncertainty and determination. He no longer had his entourage surrounding him. He stood alone, looking younger and somehow smaller than he had in the cage. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, his voice lacking its usual brash confidence. He hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. I wanted to apologize to both of you for my disrespect earlier. A hush fell over the studio. The cameras swiveled to capture this unexpected development. Tyson's expression remained impassive, assessing the young fighter with the same intensity he brought to everything. Norris watched with quiet attention, his face revealing nothing of his thoughts. Williams took their silence as permission to continue. What I saw today, what you both showed everyone, that was real fighting, not the show I've been putting on. He swallowed hard, visibly uncomfortable with his own vulnerability, but pressing on regardless. I've been confusing attention with respect. I see that now. The studio remained silent, everyone watching the two legends for their reaction to this unscripted moment of contrition. Tyson spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of his own hard-earned wisdom. Kid, you've got talent. Real talent. Don't waste it trying to be something you're not. Respect isn't demanded, Norris added gently. It's earned. Through actions, not words. Williams nodded, accepting their counsel with none of the defensiveness he might have shown hours earlier. I'd like to learn, he said simply, from both of you, if you're willing to teach. Tyson and Norris exchanged another glance, a moment of silent communication between two men who had traveled different paths to reach the same understanding. Humility, Tyson said finally, is always the first lesson. The moment hung in the air, unplanned, unscripted, yet somehow the perfect conclusion to the evening's events. It wasn't just about the clash between Tyson and Norris anymore. It was about the passing of wisdom from one generation to the next, about the eternal cycle of learning, growing, and understanding that defines not just fighting but life itself. The cameras captured it all, broadcasting to millions of viewers worldwide. But unlike much of what was shown on television, this wasn't performance or spectacle. It was authentic human connection, the kind that transcends sport, entertainment, and even time itself. As the interview concluded and the studio prepared to return to the regular broadcast, Tyson leaned over to Norris. "They're going to want a rematch," he said with a hint of his trademark grin. Norris's eyes twinkled with quiet humor. "Some fights only need to happen once," he replied. "Some lessons only need to be taught once." Tyson nodded, understanding perfectly. What had happened tonight wasn't about competition or dominance. It was about demonstration, about reminder, about truth. And that, both legends knew, was more powerful than any punch or kick could ever be. The story of Mike Tyson and Chuck Norris's unexpected exhibition match spread like wildfire. By morning, footage of their encounter had been viewed over 1 billion times across the globe. Sports analysts dissected every exchange while social media erupted with debates about fighting philosophies and legacies. In a suite at the Bellagio, Tyson sat watching the Las Vegas sunrise. Despite the previous night's exertion, sleep had eluded him, his mind too engaged with what had transpired in that cage. A knock at the door revealed Chuck Norris standing in the hallway. "Mind if I come in?" Norris asked. "Thought we might talk without cameras for a change." Tyson welcomed him with a nod, and they settled in the sitting area where coffee had already been served. "Media's been calling all night," Tyson said, pouring a cup for Norris. "Even got offers for a rematch, 7 figures. Norris accepted the coffee with a small smile. "Same here. My agent called about a movie deal. Tyson versus Norris. The ultimate showdown. Hollywood moves fast." "You taking any offers?" Tyson asked. "No. Some things should remain as they are." He took a sip. "You?" "Nah. Been there. Made a career out of being a spectacle. Gets old." They sat in comfortable silence before Tyson spoke again. "Been thinking about that kid Williams. The one who started this with his showing off. What about him? Reminds me of myself. Back when I thought being feared was the same as being respected." Tyson's expression darkened. "Took me a long time to learn the difference." Norris nodded. "Common mistake among talented young fighters. Success comes too easily. Too quickly." "What about you?" Tyson asked. "You were a champion before most people knew your name. Did you go through that phase? The arrogance?" Norris considered the question. "Not in the same way. My challenges were different. I had to fight for everything. Recognition, opportunities, respect. The martial arts weren't mainstream when I started." "That builds a different character," Tyson observed. "It does. But we all have our struggles. Mine was perfectionism, believing if I mastered enough techniques, won enough championships, I could somehow control life itself." Norris smiled ruefully. "Life teaches us otherwise." Another knock interrupted them. Tyson's security team entered, followed by promoters, network executives, and agents, the machinery of entertainment arriving to capitalize on last night's drama. "Mike." "Chuck." The lead promoter began enthusiastically. "What you created last night was magic. The numbers are unprecedented. We're prepared to offer an exclusive contract for a 3-event series, Tyson vs. Norris II, masterclass seminars, a reality show competition." "No," Norris said quietly. The promoter faltered. I'm sorry? He said no. Tyson repeated firmly. And I'm saying the same. No rematch. No series. No reality show. The room fell silent as the executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Gentlemen, I don't think you understand the magnitude of what's on the table. 8 figures. Minimum. Legacy-defining opportunities. Our legacies are already defined, Norris replied, with quiet certainty. By decades of work, not one night in a cage. And if you understood what actually happened last night, Tyson added, you'd know it can't be repeated, not for any amount. After the business entourage departed, another visitor arrived, Jordan Williams, the young fighter whose arrogance had sparked everything. His usual swagger was notably absent. Thank you for seeing me, Williams said. I meant what I said last night about wanting to learn from you both. What did you see in that cage? Norris asked gently. Real fighting, Williams answered without hesitation. Not what I've been doing. Not the show. The trash talk. The social media stunts. What you showed, that was something deeper. Tyson studied him, searching for insincerity but finding none. It's called respect. For yourself, your opponent, and the art itself. I want that, Williams said simply. I want to be remembered for more than just highlights. It's not an easy path, Norris warned. Especially once you've established a certain image. I don't care. Last night changed something for me. Watching you, 2 different styles, different backgrounds, different generations, but both showing the same core principles. It made me realize how shallow my approach has been. Tyson and Norris exchanged a glance, a silent communication that had developed despite their brief acquaintance. All right, Tyson said finally. 1 week. Chuck and I will work with you. No cameras, no publicity, no social media. We'll show you what we know. After that, it's up to you what you do with it. Williams's face lit up with genuine excitement. When do we start? Now, Norris said, standing. First lesson begins immediately. What's the lesson? Williams asked eagerly. Tyson grinned, the same predatory smile that had intimidated opponents throughout his career. Humility. We're going to a real gym, where nobody knows your name or cares about your record. Over the next week, the unlikely trio trained together away from the spotlight. They worked in different environments, a boxing gym where Tyson was welcomed as family, a traditional dojo where Norris was greeted with respect, even a public park where they practiced movement and awareness among ordinary people. Williams began to transform. The cocky showman gave way to something more substantive, a fighter who understood that true skill doesn't require constant validation. His questions became more thoughtful, his practice more focused. On their final day together, Williams completed a series of drills that combined Tyson's explosive power with Norris's precise control. I don't know how to thank you both, he said afterward. This week has changed everything for me. Don't thank us, Norris replied. Show us. In how you fight, in how you carry yourself, in how you treat others in the sport. The real test starts tomorrow, Tyson added seriously. When you go back to your team, your fans, your old habits, everything will pull you back toward what's familiar. Williams nodded. I know, but I'm not the same person I was a week ago. As they prepared to part ways, the elderly gym trainer approached with water. Watched you working with the kid, he said to Tyson and Norris. Reminds me of both of you. Back before the fame and money, when it was just about the pure joy of mastering the craft. The 3 fighters shared a moment of silent understanding. a recognition that, beneath their differences, they were connected by something timeless and profound. "Remember," Norris said to Williams, "true strength isn't in dominating others. It's in mastering yourself. And remember," Tyson added with a hint of his intimidating grin, "that even when no one's watching, someone's always watching, including yourself." 3 months later, the MGM Grand Garden Arena hummed with anticipation. In the VIP section, Tyson and Norris sat quietly observing the fights, their unlikely friendship having deepened since their historic encounter. "He's up next," Tyson noted, glancing at the fight card. Norris nodded. "Should be interesting to see what he's learned." The main event featured Jordan Williams defending his championship against a veteran challenger known for technical precision and humility. The contrast with Williams' previous persona had created compelling pre-fight narratives, with many expecting another display of the champion's flashy arrogance. But Williams had changed. His pre-fight interviews had been thoughtful rather than boastful, respectful instead of dismissive. Many dismissed this as a calculated PR move, but Tyson and Norris recognized genuine transformation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, "it's time for our main event of the evening." The challenger entered first, with quiet determination. Then came Williams' introduction, and the arena prepared for the spectacle they'd come to expect. Instead, Williams emerged alone. No entourage, no camera crew documenting his every move. He wore a simple robe without flashy sponsors. His expression was focused, present. He acknowledged the crowd respectfully, but didn't play to them. "Look at that," Tyson said quietly. "No show. Just a fighter." Norris nodded with approval. First test passed. Inside the cage, Williams greeted his opponent with respect before returning to his corner. No trash talk, no intimidation tactics, just the pure essence of competition. From the first exchange, this was clearly not the same Jordan Williams. His technique remained brilliant, but there was a new dimension to his fighting. A thoughtfulness, a precision, an economy of movement. He no longer fought to impress the crowd or create viral moments. He fought with purpose and respect for both his opponent and the art itself. In the third round, Williams found his opening. A subtle feint created the perfect opportunity for a counter. With explosive speed, he delivered a combination that sent his opponent to the canvas. When the referee waved off the fight, Williams' celebration was measured. He waited for his opponent to recover, then approached him with an extended hand and words of respect. "Second test passed," Norris said quietly. During the post-fight interview, Williams surprised everyone. "First, I want to acknowledge my opponent. His skill and heart made me bring the absolute best version of myself tonight. That's what this sport should be about, pushing each other toward excellence," he continued, glancing toward Tyson and Norris. "I've learned that it's not about who can talk the loudest or create the most highlights. It's about mastery, about respect, about honoring the art and everyone who's part of it." Later that evening, the three fighters met at a quiet restaurant, away from the spotlight. "You fought well tonight," Norris said, with purpose and clarity. "My team, the promoters, the sponsors, they all want the old Jordan back," Williams admitted. "The one who generates headlines and controversy." "You define success on your own terms," Norris advised. "Not by what others expect. Ask yourself what matters more," Tyson added. "Being the most talked about fighter, or being the fighter you respect when you look in the mirror." As they parted ways, Williams faced one final test when fans unexpectedly appeared outside. After a brief hesitation, he approached them with genuine warmth, not as a celebrity performing for content, but as a fighter connecting authentically with those who appreciated the sport. Third test passed, Tyson noted. As they walked to their cars, Tyson asked, "Think he'll stay on this path?" Norris considered the question thoughtfully. "That's not for us to determine. We've shown him the door. Whether he walks through it, that's his choice to make. Same choice we all face. Every day. Every moment," Norris corrected gently. The two legends, different in style, but united in understanding, exchanged a final handshake of mutual respect, embodying the timeless truth that respect is never demanded, only earned. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.